Okay.
All right.
Almost panicked.
All right. So we are officially live. Good evening, folks on this side of the world. Good morning to Stephen and Walter. We're so excited to have you tonight. You may notice that we are missing our friend Stephanie of Quilting with Stephanie Stitches. There was family rearranging and stuff. So Stephanie's going to be in the chat, but won't be on video with us tonight. But when she says hello, everybody say hi to her. We are going to be, there she is. There's Stephanie. We're going to be discussing all things patterns in just a few minutes. But before we get to talking about that specific social hour conversation, I wanted to give everybody a chance to talk about what they've got going on, and like what's coming up in the next week. And I think we know what Stephen and Walter have going on right now, but we'll start with Russ and let him talk about his channel and everything. And then we'll go to Stephen and Walter, and then we'll ask for some updates from Stephanie in the chat.
So I'm Russ with Quilt Meets World. I have a live every Saturday morning at 11. It's a lot of fun, work on a random project. Last week, I made my very first canvas bag. That was a lot of fun. And then on Sunday evenings, I publish my weekly vlog of all the shenanigans that I've gotten up to through the entire week.
All the shenanigans. Awesome. Sorry, my Smoothie King just got delivered.
Kind of jealous. Where are we getting ours? Are we going to get ours?
Yeah, be on the lookout. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so Stephen and Walter, if you can still hear us, I see Stephen looking down. I just want to make sure you guys are good. Okay, good.
Yeah, we're good.
Hi, hello. It's so cool to have you here all the way around the world. What do you all, what are your plans for the rest of the week? And
well, we are in the Hunter Valley right now. The Hunter Valley is a wine producing district of Australia, very famous for many wines.
We're about 200 kilometers north of Sydney right now.
Yeah. And so we've had one night here already. Today we're going out. There's a big botanical garden in this area we're going to go to, and then we might do a little trip around some of the wineries. We basically, because we're driving and everything, we can't really do any kind of tasting on any level. And we're not buying anything because we'd have to try and get it back to Canada. And yeah, no, I just picture my suitcase with bottles of wine in it and coming down the carriage, all dripping from it. So no, we won't be doing that. And tomorrow we head our way back to Sydney, and that's where we're ending up the trip. We'll be in Sydney how many days?
We'll be there 5 nights, and then one final night we have at the airport. So that the day before we will return the car and then spend the night in Sydney airport, because we have to get to the airport like 4 hours before the flight, and the flight leaves at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah.
Walter, what are you doing
sleep
to yourself?
Well, maybe it'll help me sleep on the plane. Yeah, it's a 15-hour trip to Vancouver, right? And then do we have a stopover?
Yeah, a 2-hour stopover, and then another 5 hours to Toronto.
So yeah, we're going to be out of commission for a few days when we get back.
But the funny thing is we leave at 9:20 in the morning from Sydney, and then arrive at 6 o'clock in the morning in Vancouver on the same day.
Yeah. It really screws with your brain, you know.
And then arrive in Toronto at 4 p.m. the same day. So it's all one day.
That's amazing.
So, but just very quickly, if you guys have been watching any of our videos, because we've been able to post a video every day. And of course went from Sydney, drove up ended up in Brisbane. Saw Philippa, spent a day with her, had a lot of fun. I see she's on here. Hi, Philippa.
Yes, there she is. Yeah.
For the first time ever, Philippa and Walter and I are in the same time zone. So we had a good time in Brisbane. We love Brisbane. It's a great city. And yeah, so, but am I ready to come home? I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I want to get back. And somebody I noticed in the comments asked if I missed sewing. Actually, no. And I'm surprised at that. Although I've gotten some wonderful ideas for future patterns I'm going to develop. I'll let you know a hint. One of those patterns involves a bathroom floor. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
No,
But we're not going to
it wasn't
talk about.
inspired by the dresses.
Oh yeah, well we won't talk about that today. About that, but there'll be lots to talk about when we get back home. So we don't need to talk about anything more on here because I'm sure everybody who's been following our videos are probably Australia to death. We have a knock on our door. I don't know what's happening. So take it away, Shannon and
All
Russ.
right. I'm kind of excited. I want to see who's at the door. Well, let's see. Because Stephanie is in the chat, and I think everybody knows what Stephanie's got going on for the next almost week. But if she wants to give us some details about what we've got coming up this week, I'm so excited to get to see Stephanie again. So it's like we're on this every other month kick that I'm excited about. I can definitely get used to that. Getting to see her at the third annual Millersburg retreat. I am distracted because I want to know what's happening at Stephen's apartment. Yes, Stephanie says retreat. All exclamation marks.
Was it a smoothie?
Yeah. Did they get there for you? So yes, so Stephanie and my week kind of merges together because we're gonna see each other in Millersburg with there's 26 of us there this go around. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm picking up Ingrid tomorrow morning. We're meeting Marianne up there. And that Marianne we met at Pennsylvania. And so she's one of the cheetah suckers. So we're bringing that to Millersburg this year, which is exciting. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting there and getting to see everybody. We have a Facebook chat, and it's just been exploding over the past couple of days, figuring out like shop hopping and food and all the kind of stuff, where everybody's going to meet and everything. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, Stephanie just said it's the third annual. Oh, and featuring me. Yes, I get to actually face-to-face instruct at this retreat. So that's going to be pretty cool. And it's my second ever published pattern. So I think that's a nice segue into the conversation for tonight about all things patterns. And the first thing I wanted to start with was positive things about patterns. So I wanted to ask everybody, what are the things that catch your eye about different patterns, whether that be a pattern for a quilt, if it's a pattern for a new shirt or a new bag, or because Russ, you just did a bag this past weekend. So yep. Like, what are the things about patterns that catches your eye and draws you in and makes you want to purchase that pattern, especially the purchase ones? Free ones are easy. You could just download them and then ignore them. But the ones that you spend your money on, what are the things that draw you in? And Walter, if you want to start, I'd love to know what intrigues you about the patterns that you buy.
Well, clothing patterns are just that you want to buy a particular style of shirt or something like that, or shorts that have features. And a lot of times clothing patterns, you can add or take away features. So it's not, that's not as interesting as with quilting patterns, because if I look at a quilting pattern, it's more like I'll be attracted by the colors that are presented in it. And I always have a hard time trying to figure out my own colors than if I see a quilting pattern. So you might you know, be more intrigued by the colors and that. And that same, I suppose, with clothing too. You might see a pattern and it's presented in a certain way, and that's what attracts you to that pattern.
I think it's interesting that you say that it's the clothing patterns aren't as intriguing, because whenever I've seen a clothing pattern and you have all of the extra like layers of where you can cut it out, that's intriguing to me and blows my mind that you can like add ease and like add darts and all these different things that I don't have to worry about when I'm making a quilt. Like I don't have to worry about it fitting to a body. It's just a rectangle or a square at the end.
Yeah, well, that's the big problem is you gotta buy patterns based on the size of clothing that you're gonna make, right? But the actual pattern itself, like the actual style of clothing, is the same. It's just for different sizes of bodies, right? So
Yeah, pretty cool. Stephen, what about you? What intrigues you about the patterns you buy?
First thing that grabs my eye if I'm looking through patterns in a quilt store or something like that is color. And you know, like Stephanie, if it's got blue in it, immediately my eyes are going to go to it. But the second thing after I've seen the color is actually the basic block shape. And if it's got a star in it, I'm sold usually. But that's how I'll pick patterns is from that. But I don't stick to the pattern necessarily. It's more or less a guidance as to how I want to design it. But yeah, it's color and it's design. And also then I'll start looking at the instructions. And you know I have a history of finding the patterns that have the bad instructions with it.
Oh, we'll be
I
talking
look
about
at
that
those
in a little bit.
yeah. And I try to picture it in my mind. Okay, step one, okay, I get that. Step two, okay, I see where that's going, and that kind of thing. But having said that, if there's too much wording in it, and this is kind of ironic, given the fact that I have a degree in English, right? English literature, I don't want to read a lot. So I look for visuals too in it, diagrams, pictures, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how I pick a pattern.
Nice. Russ, what about you?
When I'm looking through patterns, it's always the visual. So it's definitely color if I see it in color, even though a lot of times I'll recolor it. But I'm not going to buy a pattern if it's in, I'm going to just say browns and tans and stuff like that. That's not going to appeal to me. But if they show bright colors, same pattern can be side by side, one in brights, one in like tans and stuff, and I'll go for the brights, even if it's the exact same pattern, because they look completely different to me. I've been bitten by not reading the finished size a few times, because until you know what the finished size is or the finished block size, you don't know how small you're cutting sometimes. So I have bought kits and patterns that say, 1 inch half square triangles finished, and I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to do this. I'm not gonna do it, but
Oh, I agree with that. Done the same thing.
Linda is saying easy directions. It intrigues her too.
Well, a lot of times you can't see the directions until you buy the pattern, unless it's a postcard. So, like, if you look at a pattern, online, if you're looking at a pattern, you have no idea what you're ever going to get. If you're in a quilt shop, sometimes you can open up the pattern and see what's in there.
Take a look,
But that's not always the case, depending on, the shop owner and stuff, because some people have good memories and they just say, well, I'm making this stuff and now I don't need the pattern anymore.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point too, that if you're a beginner quilter and if you can't see the instructions, then you could be biting off more than you can chew. So sometimes on some patterns, they will, label it easy, beginner friendly, confident beginner, that kind of stuff. But the other thing too that I do is when I see a pattern and I can't see the instructions, I try to analyze it. What are they doing here? Is this a lot of half square triangles? Is this a lot of flying geese? How are they working with all of that to make the determination and to make sure there are no Y seams? I do not like Y seams.
Let's see. Stephanie's saying stars always grab her attention right off the bat. So she's right there with you, Stephen, on that. And then she's also is checking to see if it's wordy, if she can see it. If it's wordy, she'll put it back. So if she's able to like have it in her hand, she's not trying to read a novel, which is true. And I think sometimes a lot of the words end up being more confusing than the images, where you just follow what the picture is doing. That's, I think for a lot of us, it is far easier to follow the picture than to read all of those words that can offer too much information. And for me, when I first started, and I'm going into what, year 4 now of quilting. When I first started, it was all word of mouth. Like if somebody else had done it and said it was easy, like on their YouTube channel or something, then I would purchase it and take a look at it. Or if it came with a tutorial on YouTube, and I felt like I understood it from watching them, I would do it. It took me a while before I felt confident enough to just, purchase what caught my eye, whether it be color. And I think that's a really interesting point for when people are doing their quilt patterns. I think the ones that I lean to the most are the ones that show more than one color choice.
Yeah.
Because I'm not necessarily going to be excited about purples and pinks, but the greens and the teals into blues, I'm 1,000% for, or like the earth tones or whatever. So that must be a delicate like line to tread though for pattern writers, how much information or how many choices that they're putting in for it.
So you make an interesting comment about tutorials, because like I've gotten into patterns, and I have friends who have gotten into patterns that you see the tutorial that it's one block, or they show a portion block, and then you find out that you got to make like 700 of those blocks. And the tutorial doesn't tell you that. They're like, this is so simple. Here it is. Yeah. And they're doing it on a very small scale. And all of a sudden it's, you have to make all these blocks, and you're like,
yeah,
oh, that's a little intense.
Actually,
so go ahead.
3 things that you've talked about that I want to touch on. One, with this idea of the tutorials. I have seen tutorials for patterns that are totally different than the instructions given in the pattern. So you want to talk about confusing you, especially if you're a beginner. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's bad. Another thing too about patterns as well, about wordiness of them. Okay, everybody knows, I think, about Art East Quilt Company, their patterns, which are fantastic, but they're a book. They're a bloody book. And they're tiny little pieces, and I get lost in their instructions. I mean, because there's so much text on the page. Now, having said that, don't anybody be discouraged from trying to do an Art East quilt, especially if you like working with little pieces. I don't, because the instructions are written very clearly. But what you need to do is have a pencil or a highlighter in hand when you're going through it, and tick off each thing and make sure you read the instructions twice on there. Because I've gotten, on a couple that I've done, I have gotten myself lost, and it wasn't necessarily because of the instructions themselves. It was because there was so much text. I was like a squirrel, like squirrel, I don't know, where am I now? I'm lost in the whole bit. And so I made something completely different than what was intended. So, yeah.
Let's see. So Sylvia says it's interesting. 90% of what she's done is following a YouTuber, and that's where she's gotten her inspiration for the patterns that she's going to do. Kay is saying if she can imagine giving it to someone. Did I miss? Maybe she said something else. I'm not sure.
What attracts you to a pattern?
Oh, if she can imagine giving it to someone. Yeah. Okay. Math Geek is saying color often draws her in too. Sue's saying, oh, so yeah, not too many words. And I think we've really touched base on some of the things also that we don't like about patterns. So we talked about not too much words, having a lot of pictures, what are other things that you've found that has made you decide, oh, I may have already gotten this pattern, but I'm not going to do it because I don't like this, this, and this, or that you've just not finished it because you didn't like what was going on? Russ, we'll start with you.
A lot of it is the methodology. Like, I have pieces right over there for a quilt that needs to get done, but it used a strip tube method for half square triangles, and that was killer. Again, in the tutorial, it doesn't look like it's that bad until you have to cut out 372 of them.
Yeah.
Then cutting them out individually is a big pain in the neck. It's something that we don't like. So when they, and I know you can't get out of it sometimes, because even if you did them traditionally, you're still cutting out a whole bunch of triangles. So I get it. But yeah, there's a lot of times it's volume that ends up saying, you know, I'm going to put this away for a while until my procrastination says it's got to get done now.
Mm.
But I've also look at things and say, can I use the same fabric requirements or in and everything, and redo some of the, like for triangles, to use like triangulations and stuff, or some people like triangles on a roll. That is a lot of fun to try to figure out, because, you know, when you have something that you like, and if you have the fabric for it, do it the way you like it better.
Yeah, and I think that's a difficult thing, though, to, especially if you're a beginner, to try to figure out, do you have enough fabric? If you've gotten the kit and you're like, oh, I really like to make half square triangles 8 at a time, can I do that with what they've given me? Half the time, I would never have known when I first started.
Yeah.
I still, I'll ask Stephanie, if I have this much, is that enough?
And I've still done bad math and been like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
how do I fix this?
Stephen, I know that you have had some horrible experiences with patterns.
Oh yes.
What are your turnoffs with patterns and like things that pattern writers do?
Okay, one of my major turnoffs when I look at a pattern is that I have to buy another ruler, because they want you to, their whole pattern is designed around using yeah. And I still look at it and go, can I do this with the equipment I have? When I first started quilting, I was a ruler slut. I bought every ruler that was out there, and I literally probably have 100 different rulers, and most of them sit in a drawer rotting because they were one-offs, or they're rulers. I found better rulers for doing the stuff. And like, also that if you get, you know, is there another way to make things more efficient in a pattern? You know, like make 8 half square triangles at a time. But if it's a kit, like you said, Shannon, is there enough fabric? And that's one of the reasons I kind of lean away from kits, because I've had experience before where there is never enough fabric, or one fabric you're a little short on. They don't take into consideration that you might make a mistake in your cutting, you know?
Yeah.
I like to, you know, have a generous amount of fabric when I'm doing something. So I prefer to buy my own fabric based on what they say, and then I'll add, you know, half a meter to some of it or more. And yes, it ends up costing you more money. Yes, there's fabric left over. I don't have a problem with leftover fabric.
It saves on mental health, though. I think, like, it's just
like it's true.
I at the Georgia retreat, when Walter, you were like, they were giving you instructions for something that mathematically, like, what you could not do, like, you could not cut it out at that size and then magically create a square that was bigger than that like, it's so frustrating to not have the right amount of fabric when it's in a kit and you're trusting them that they're giving you enough to make what they've sold you. So crazy.
Yeah.
Walter, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, and it also depends on who is making up the kits. Sometimes the kits are made by the company who are producing the pattern or whatever with the designer. Sometimes it's your local quilt shop. They've decided to do all the cutting, and they're not doing it necessarily on purpose, but you know, if they're in a quilt shop, they're cutting, they get interrupted by a customer, they come back to it. It's very easy for them to make a mistake with
Yeah.
it. So, you know,
Or they'll make a
buyer beware.
modification to the end product. So that, like, the pattern may say this fabric was supposed to be your border, but then they cut this fabric for your border.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, Stephanie's talking about, you know, the anything that says you have to purchase this template, this ruler to make this one thing that you're only going to do one time in your life. Not for her. And I'm 100% on board with that. And then anything where the math doesn't work, like, and that as I've been writing them, is like constantly freaks me out. Am I remembering to, and Stephanie and I just talked about this, am I remembering to add the seam allowance when I'm saying, oh, it's going to be this, like just to make it not bad for the people that are doing it, because that's the worst. Like you're chugging along and you think you're doing great. And then you're like, why is this not working? Why is it not working out? It's so
Quilt math.
frustrating.
Hard.
Yeah. 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 Quilt math especially. I don't know. Walter, what about you? What are some things that you have disliked about patterns that you've worked on?
Sometimes they leave out instructions. Sometimes they're not clear as to do certain like seams or something like that. If most of the patterns are pretty accurate as to how much fabric that you need, because clothing is kind of it depends on your size too, or something like that you're making, how much fabric you need. I always buy more than what I need, because I have made a mistake, like I've ruined a sleeve in the process or something like that, and then I need to cut another sleeve. And if I only bought the amount of fabric they told me to buy, then I might not have enough fabric to make that sleeve. So
Yeah.
and that it's a little bit different when you're doing clothing pattern than if you're doing quilting type pattern.
Is that when you're saying that they leave out instructions, is that something that is common with clothing patterns where they just assume you know something?
Well,
so
there's different techniques of doing different things. Like there was a Vogue pattern I was following, and luckily I was in a class. And they told you to produce a pocket a certain way, right? And there's an easier way of doing it, right? So they were telling me the hard way of doing it, and luckily I had an instructor available that showed me the easy way to do it. So and this particular instructor actually designed the pattern that Vogue was had produced the pattern for. But Vogue has their own method of doing this kind of pocket, and he's told them over and over again, you should use my method, right, to do this pocket, because it's easier for somebody that's a beginner. The Vogue just ignores them and does it the way they want to do it. So
that's frustrating. Let's see. Oh, Stephanie is saying like getting 2 8.5 square triangles from an 8.5 square. Yeah, that's what I remember about the kit that both Walter and Stephanie got from Halifax, was that the math, you can't do that. There's no way that that's ever going to work. Luane said, I've seen videos making half square rectangles and have to go out and buy the ruler for that. No thanks. Yeah, I don't anything. So in my culinary world, I love Alton Brown, and he calls them unitaskers. And if it's a unitasker, he's got no time for it. I'm the same way. Like everything I have in my kitchen does more than one thing. Everything I have on my table does more than one thing. And the only time that I'm going to have something that does one thing is if it does that one thing so freaking well, I can't live without it. And there's, if it's a pattern I'm willing to make one time, there is no way I'm going to buy a thing just for that one pattern for that one time I'm going to do it, because I'll never, it just is a waste of money to me. And it's frustrating that then the pattern writer is putting that on their customers to make them go and buy that one special thing just to do their pattern because their pattern's so cool. I don't think so. No, not for me. Not at all.
Oh, Isn't it sometimes they're selling the ruler with a pattern because
Yeah.
the ruler manufacturer is created a pattern for that ruler?
Yeah.
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 I mean,
And somebody mentioned in the comments way back when we were talking about what attracts us to a pattern, they were saying they like to see a sample of it, and which I agree, but I mean, you can't have every pattern, can't have a sample for it. But when
Yeah,
I'm
it's
going
true.
into my local quilt store, if they've got samples of the quilts hanging up, and oftentimes if they're clever, the quilt store owner, they will put a little tag on it, say kit available or
Mhm.
pattern available, or put the pattern with it. And that will attract me as well, because you're looking at a picture, but when you see it in real life, it can be very
yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And we were
Ingrid
talking
saying
about
Vogue
buying.
patterns. Oop, sorry about that.
I was gonna say we're talking about buying templates and stuff. A lot of them are expensive, but I will say the space quilt that I did for the Christmas gift, I bought the template only because I would have gone through a lot more torture trying to make the template myself, and the template was only $12.
Yeah.
So I felt that was reasonable compared to the torture to make the template in order to get the finished product that I wanted. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And actually, the whole thing with templates too. Patterns, you see a pattern, but if it's a commercial pattern, you can't see the inside, and you're looking at it and go, yeah, well, that's a neat design. I like it. I hate it when I open it up and I see a page of drawn out templates.
Yeah.
That just turns me right off, because okay, in that case, if I really, really, really like the pattern or whatnot, I will see if I can get a plastic template for it. I have not had a lot of luck drawing them out on the template plastic, and
yeah.
that is just too thin. And I'm not going to use my scissors and try to cut out stuff I've traced onto the fabric with that.
You also had a problem one time with that African fabric where you
Oh,
bought
yes.
a kit, what you thought you was a kit, and actually it was a package of fabric with a picture on the outside. And when you opened it up, you realized that the pattern was not included with the kit.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
What?
was horrible. Yeah, I
yeah.
bought that at the quilt show in Halifax, and
Yeah.
I had already paid quite a bit for the kit, and it was just all the fabric but no pattern. And yeah, you had to go to their website and you had to buy for another $15 Canadian the pattern, and that just spoke to me as being a very bad business practice. And I won't deal with that company again. There's
Yeah.
other reasons too, but we talked about that a long time ago on the video.
Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Hopefully Luke will be okay. He was a little bit upset, so we'll see. Hi everybody.
Yep. Mom duty comes
Hi,
first.
Stephanie.
Yep.
But we're glad you're here for as long as you can be. We were talking about the things that frustrate us. I think it's Pat that asked a really good question. Do you prefer PDF or printed patterns?
For me,
So Stephanie, since you just joined us, which do you prefer? So not necessarily that you're producing, but what if you're going to buy one? Which do you prefer to have?
Honestly, I really don't care either way. I'm sort of like instant gratification kind of person, and if somebody suggests a pattern and I like it and I can get it immediately in a PDF, I go get it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
But if I see it at a quilt shop and it's printed, I like that too. So either way.
Yeah. I think we might all agree with that. Russ, are you on the same boat with that? Or do you like one?
But what I was going to add is no matter what, I'm going to digitize it so that I can print it over and over again and make notes on it. And that way I don't ruin the original in case I have to scratch out a note or something like that. So like I've got patterns, I will print them out, I'll scribble up on them. It's also great for checking off steps because if you're going through a pattern step by step and you need to check off where you're at, and then you want to make it again, you'd have to erase all of those check marks somehow. Otherwise, you can just reprint another version of it.
There have been a couple of people in the a couple of people in the chat that have been talking about making sure they have graph paper with them, making sure they have note paper with them to make the changes that they want to. And I think there are some people that get like annoyed that people change their pattern or whatever. But again, I kind of couch everything in the view of a chef. Like that's what we do all the time. We're forever changing every recipe we ever work on. We're adding and taking away and doing whatever. And to me, I think that's like when I saw so many people do so many different things with the virtual retreat pattern, the paper magician, like Stephen, what you did, what everybody did that was so like just added their own personality to it. That's the biggest compliment in the world to me. So I love that people are having sketchbooks ready to change it up and like make it their own. And I think that's the great like freedom of doing the quilting, that you have the ability with fabric choice, or if you don't like that block, don't have that block, do something else that you like. How do you guys feel about that? Like, is that a part of what makes it fun for you, or do you just want to follow the pattern verbatim and not have to think? No quilt math.
Well, I think if you're a beginner quilter and you're just getting into this, then and you have a tendency to want to change things to make it your own, don't as a beginner, because you've got to learn the basics, and that's what these patterns will help you with. But after that, as you get more confident, then yeah, I think all of us probably look at a pattern more as a guide and decide, how do I make this my own? So like you, Shannon, with my first pattern that I put out, people have been showing me what they did with it, and they did change a few things, and I think that's great. Go with it, because I think that makes your pattern as a pattern creator more versatile.
Yeah.
But if you're one of the ones, and this is where it comes back again to what we were saying about specialized templates and rulers for something, that can really turn somebody off who wants to make the quilt their own as well.
Yeah.
So I think it behooves a pattern maker, and I had to get in behooves because I love behooves. It behooves a pattern maker not to make a pattern that has some potential for someone to alter things to suit their purposes. I think it makes you more purchasable. And then we're talking about PDF patterns. I prefer PDF patterns, but for the same reason Stephanie does. I want instant gratification. I don't want to wait for it to come from the mail. I want to download it and download it now. Plus, like Russ said, I write all over them.
Yeah.
So I can print out a clean copy anytime I want to if I've got it on my computer. And not only that, but sometimes they'll give you a diagram that is very hard to see in the printed format because it's a little tiny thing. I can throw it on my printer, blow it up, and then for my old eyes, I can see what the hell they're talking about. And Walter uses PDF patterns.
Yeah, I do for clothing. I was introduced actually some of the clothing I made was originally a woman that produced men's clothing patterns that lives in Norway, or I'm sorry, Denmark or Norway, I can't remember. And so getting a printed pattern would be difficult to get it. So she produces PDF patterns, and that's how I was introduced to clothing patterns. But I really like PDF patterns because, well, they're a nuisance. If I can print them off on my own printer and stick them all together with cellophane tape, right? Or they often provide a version that you can take to a Staples or an office place, and they can print out a big pattern, which I've never done. I've always just printed it off on my printer and stuck it all together. And what's nice about that is the patterns come in layers, and you can just print off the layer that you'd want, like the one that for each different size of clothing that you want to make. So you don't have to worry about all the other little lines that are on the diagram that you do when you have a purchased pattern and that. And I can reprint, I have an electronic copy. I can reprint them whenever I want to. So
I love that part, being able to just reprint.
And it's back to instant gratification. If I have to buy an online pattern that's pre-printed, I have to wait for it to be shipped to me before I can use it. So
and you got shipping costs too.
Yeah,
on top
exactly.
of all of that.
And the PDF patterns actually for clothing are cheaper than if you buy a pre-printed pattern. Significantly cheaper, actually.
Yeah.
So like a preprint PDF pattern might cost me $15 or something, where to get it pre-printed, it's a $50 pattern plus shipping. So
Because they're passing on the cost of having to print it out.
yeah, it's been
You
done on a professional printer and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it's the tissue paper stuff. So
I just saw a quote that I would like to put on a t-shirt. Ingrid said that she wants to make every pattern her bitch. That will be a new t-shirt available in a week, I swear to you. She
Now-
wants to change it, overcomplicate it, and break out Excel. My girl.
And you know, we were talking, oh, sorry, Russ, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I will say that I don't like working from a PDF pattern. I don't want a pattern on the screen for me to have the cutting instructions and piecing instructions. I want them printed out on a piece of paper. So
I
that
never print
there.
any of them. I do them all from my iPad. I never print a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm with you, Russ, on that as well. I want the physical thing in my hand so I can write it,
Yeah.
on it and everything like that. So yeah, I'm the same way. But another thing too, and this is going back to our beginning of our discussion when we were talking about what attracts us to a pattern as well. One thing that attracts me to a pattern, especially if it's online and it's a PDF that I can see it, is the block itself. I may not really want to make that whole quilt, but I want to make that block to use that
Oh.
block as my
Oh.
foundation for making a whole quilt. So
Yeah.
I have done that with patterns as well. Never made the quilt, but I used the pattern to make the block to do a quilt. So that's another way I will pick patterns sometimes.
That's really good. I like that. Let's see. Jean says the only problem she's had with some of the downloaded patterns is it depends if it can read their formatting. Have you had formatting issues when you've downloaded?
Well, with her, it's her iPad. Doesn't like all the formats and stuff like that. I know most patterns should be in PDF format, but I have seen a couple of them where they've been put in a different, like somebody put it in like a Word document format for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I've
Yeah, that's
seen
true.
that.
Yeah.
What
I've
is
seen-
your oops sorry
No, it's okay, Shannon, go ahead.
Oh, Pat was asking what is your pain tolerance for the prices of patterns?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
If I really, 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 really want it, I'll pay any price.
Yeah.
Within reason. But most time I find that patterns run anywhere, at least in Canadian dollars, from $15 to $18 for a pattern, depending, and that's okay. That price range doesn't bother me at all. So I don't have a limit unless, okay. Not to pick on them, Shannon, legit kits patterns.
Mhm.
They're very expensive. And now I know why, because it's a book. It's
Yeah.
basically a book with it. But that I would have to really, really want that to pay that kind of price. Like what? Canadian dollars, $80 to $90 for
Yeah.
one of their major patterns.
And
I
you
think
can
it's
only
more
do
than
those once, really.
Yeah, you really
Yeah.
do only do them once. That's the thing that makes me sad about them taking away the digital option, because that was such a money saving like catch for people that maybe they are going to do it like right away. So buying all that fabric isn't in the cards, but they know they want that pattern. And yeah. Oh, hey, Laura Lynn, say hi to Mom and Pop Shop. Woo!
Hi.
well, not only that, you also allow people that are in remote areas and things like that to be able to buy a pattern.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
may not have as good a postal system or something
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah.
So for
Um,
me, I will pretty much pay whatever a designer of a pattern asks, because as a pattern writer myself, I know how much work goes into it. I mean,
Yeah.
people think that it's just drawing a pattern. It's not. it's hours worth of work, drawing, and then the tech writing, and then the revision and the editing, and then the sample making. It's not a quick process. It takes a long time, and I feel like pattern writers should be compensated for that.
Yeah. I was gonna
And I
say,
agree with you on that, Stephanie,
Yeah.
because now that I've started to develop my own too, I totally agree with it. But I think we also, as pattern writers, do have to take in consideration that there is probably in general a threshold of how,
Yeah.
you know, how much we can charge for a pattern. And it's like selling a quilt, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
You never get the full value of what it took to produce that final product, because people just they don't necessarily get it, and so it's a fine balance.
yeah. But I think that I've seen a couple of times, and the only reason why I know this now is because I'm not a newbie anymore. I'm not at the beginning, but there will be people that are charging crazy amounts for their patterns where they're just very simple blocks, but they're trying to make as much money as they can. Like, and like, yes, you are putting a lot of time in it, to put it together and everything. But if you're doing just a Missouri Star, or I don't know, what, like, don't charge people $25 for your pattern just so you can make some money. Like, have some common sense. Like, that is not a $25 worth of pattern.
Okay, that might be the exception, because I have seen some places that have like a block of the month, and they'll have one block saying Ohio Star, and they're charging like $12 for one block, and I'm like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, that's not. But as a new person, I never would have known. I would have been like, I guess that's what it costs, and would have just been putting all this money out. And I don't know. I just like, yes, because I'm starting to write patterns too, woohoo! And I'm putting a lot of like time and energy and excitement into it, and I believe that is worth something, but I don't believe it's worth gouging people for. Like,
Yeah, I agree, Shannon. I think that some of these companies out there that have a block of a month, and like Stephanie says, they're charging you each month $12 for one block. And people think, oh, $12, I like the block. That's no big deal. Start adding it up. If that block of the month goes for an entire year, how much you've spent just on the pattern alone to get the completed thing. And then start adding your fabric to it. You've got one heck of an expensive quilt.
Yeah.
Not only that, if your pattern is cheap enough, then it wouldn't think twice. People don't think twice about picking it up if it's a nominal fee. Whereas you start making patterns really expensive, that may encourage people to share patterns and things like that as well. So
exactly.
Yeah. Sweet. So a couple of folks are saying, the budget is the biggest problem more than anything. I love, for me, I know we talked a little bit about a tutorial, and then sometimes a tutorial will sucker you in and not give you all the details. But I do, and I think I've shown over the past year, I do love myself a good sew along. I will absolutely get a pattern that has a sew along with it, where I can share the pain and the joy with other people, and get excited about what they're doing, and see the fabric choices they're all making. Do you guys feel similarly? Do you like a sew along? Do you want no part of having to be around or working with a bunch of people? What are your thoughts about sew alongs? We'll start with Russ.
I'm trying to remember a sew along that I've actually kept up with.
That is a hard part.
I mean, the closest I have is a Saturday sampler at our local quilt shop, where you have to have your next block done in order for you to get your next block. Or I'm sorry, you have to have your current block done before you get your next block. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. And it goes to that whole thing. If you don't do it, it's like $13-14 in order to get your next block. So it becomes an expensive quilt.
Yeah.
At, $12, $13-14 a block. But sew alongs are fun. I enjoy watching you guys do your sew alongs. I I don't think I've joined in on any of them yet. And
But Stephanie said the cotton cuts ones.
oh yeah, the cotton cuts ones as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. I I keep forgetting that cotton cuts are technically so long. So yeah.
Yeah.
And but they are how you keep yourself motivated because I'm since Stephanie said cotton cuts, Village Green, I got an entire 10 months behind, but I did get them all done at the retreat. But without the retreat, I don't know when I would have gotten them done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's that I think that's the hard part is it. I will join about I was joining way too many sew alongs and not getting anything completed because as soon as I got a month behind, I was like, oh crap. And then it'd be 2 months behind, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh well, screw this. I'm never gonna do
Yep.
it. Just put it to the side. Stephen and Walter, what do you guys think?
Well, what about you?
Well, see, I did I learned how to sew clothing through a teacher sort of taking the lead and a bunch of us following him.
Yeah.
And for that specific thing, when you're learning something new, that kind of teaching over Zoom is actually really good.
Yeah.
A way of learning how to do something or learning techniques and things like that. So I like that. I haven't really done any like just plain so-longs in a group of people that are doing garments or anything like that. So I can't really comment on that type of thing. And that might be kind of interesting as well if you did one pattern, because then you could share techniques or problems that you encounter when you're putting the pattern together type of thing.
You know, like the pocket you were
Yeah.
talking about, you learned a really good,
Yeah,
more
like I learned that from the
simple
guy
way.
that taught us how to do it. And actually, it's more of a technique and sort of like you can do it your own way type of thing. But there are things about it that you can it is nice to find out about, like using things like steam a seam on collars and pockets and
Mhm.
that, so that it helps you keep things straight and lined up for you to sew type of thing. So you use it to tack, like, I mean, the pockets, I batch them up and then I use steam a seam to glue them down before I sew them on. So that it doesn't move when I'm sewing it.
That felt
Yeah.
nice. Well, now I don't know what to say about sew-alongs. I don't usually, well, not usually. I don't think I've ever been part of a sew-along. And when I say sew-along, I'm defining it as we're all working on the same project. We have a leader in the group, and kind of the thing that Stephanie does, and you do, Shannon, and that kind of thing. I don't join in on those. And the reason I don't is I'm afraid I'm going to get behind. And I'm one of those kind of people that needs to have everything like laid out. I know what I'm doing next, and everything is
Mhm.
all coming together. And if I get behind, I get frustrated or overwhelmed. The other thing is the scheduling of the so-longs never seem to fit my schedule
Yeah.
as well. So, that's another reason I don't join those type. But having said that, what we do every Wednesday, Stephanie and I guess, is a type of sew along, but we're all working on our own projects. It's a little less formal. You work at your own pace on whatever you want. Now, I like doing that because I like having company when I'm sewing.
Yeah.
And I have not done any really, except for maybe Stephanie and Shannon's virtual retreat kind of a thing. I have not really ever taken any online instruction for much of anything. I've watched videos, but they weren't live or anything like
Mhm.
that. So I just don't tend to play well with others on when you make the rules, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, the one problem with online instruction is that you may get behind, which I'm slow at sewing, so I get behind in the class, and first time it started happening is I'd get frustrated and try and go ahead real quick, and then I'd start making a whole bunch of mistakes, and
Mm.
then that would be stressful for me type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas then I I got to the point where I just said, okay, I'll let it go because the sessions were being recorded and I can go back and view it. So that's a little different, maybe than your so longs. But then the other problem was that people would start having problems with their machines or their stitches,
Yeah.
and then they'd start, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and people get all hung up on that and stuff like that, and it could be frustrating for someone that's confident in sewing and everything's working okay, and then they're have to hang back for people that are having problems. So
Yeah, that is a delicate balance of
Yeah.
what, like, where everybody is in their with their technical prowess, with if it's virtual, with their own machines, with their sewing speed. Because I'm with you, I'm a slow sewer too. Yeah, Stephanie, how do you feel? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
No, I was going to say, I have a pet peeve as well that's tied in with so-longs. I hate it when somebody comes in late to the so-long and says, oh, I'm sorry, I've been late. The cat puked on the carpet and I had to take the dog out for a walk. What did I miss? Your life is what you
Yeah.
missed. Okay.
Yeah.
Go away. Because
Yeah.
that, you watch it on the replay if there's a replay with that, because that means, and if the instructor turns around or the leader of it turns around and goes back to square one for that one person, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
well, equally annoying is somebody that's already got the pattern and has worked ahead,
Yeah.
and they go,
Yeah.
I got it done.
Yes.
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 We know who we're talking about, don't we?
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you feel
Yeah.
pressure that you're going too slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Oh.
always the show-offs in the crowd. Look at
I
I think
definitely
that
don't.
one, I don't like that one even more than I don't like the folks that might pop in late because of
Yeah.
whatever, thing
Yeah.
they're going to come up with.
Yeah, I don't like that either. And that because it makes
I mean-
everybody else that's sewing along feel like they're slow or there's something wrong with them or
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So
And you know
obviously,
something?
yeah.
No, go ahead, Stephanie. Go ahead.
Oh, but obviously, like I do sew alongs on my channel, so does Shannon. We do them together. Stephen and I did a sew along last year. We did a quilt at the beginning of last year, and we had a lot of fun doing that. But the one thing that I like about those type of sew alongs is that one, I'm sewing with friends, so that makes it fun.
Yeah.
Two, we're doing different fabrics, so that makes it fun because it's fun to see the result that everybody
Yeah.
gets with the different fabrics. I don't care for the type of sew alongs where everybody's working on the same project with the same fabric. And in your head, I think about this every time I see a sew along, and this is no offense to them because some people love this, but like Fat Quarter Shop or one of the other big shops that does a sew along where they have 800 people doing the same exact quilt with the same exact fabric. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have the same quilt as 1,000 other people. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I think that goes back to our discussion earlier when we were talking about looking at patterns and making them your own, making
Yeah.
it your bitch, as Ingrid said, right?
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Let's see. A lot of folks are saying that they do enjoy the sew along. But I think the common thread is that they like to see what everybody else is doing. So it has to be something that everybody has chosen their own fabrics, or their maybe something, I don't know, it just has to be different in some way to make it exciting to see what everybody else is doing. I've enjoyed doing like the block of the months with legit kits as a form of instruction to get people excited about FPP. But that block of the month is the same everybody's making. So the country is full of the same exact color vortex and the same exact iris and everything. So,
and actually that's a good example. And I have not worked on vortex in probably 3 months because I'm bored with it.
yeah.
Because I see it, people get their block before me and they've got it done, and I've seen it 12 times already, and I'm like,
yeah. Yeah. So for an instruction piece, because it was a nice, easy, beginner friendly thing, it was great, but it's not really exciting outside of that. But I think the biggest thing for me, as a kind of like a wrap up of the conversation, I will forever and always fall for enablement. So anybody that has good patterns, if you tell me about them, I'm gonna end up getting them, whether I do it or if it just sits in my, in my room and I look at the pattern. I am a sucker for enablement.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I have drawers full of patterns I have never done because somebody showed it to me on a sew day or something, and I went, oh, like that, gotta get it.
Gotta
So-
have that. Yep. Yeah. Is there a source outside of enablement that you like? Is there a pattern designer that you will always go to? Oh, I mean, sometimes they might have an off month or whatever, but that you consistently go back to as a pattern designer.
Oh, I always go back to Stephanie Stitches. I love her patterns.
Steven, you picked right up on it.
You
Yep.
get brownie points.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, present company excluded. Do you end up going back to a pattern designer, or do you more regularly go back to a fabric designer and put that into different patterns?
That is a hard question.
Ooh.
I don't
So-
have any like favorite ones that I go to all the time. Really, it depends, what grabs me when I see the pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you, but I also tend to look at the fabric and then look for patterns. And if I don't find one that I like, I just write my own.
There you go.
Yeah, the fabric has to speak to the pattern. You can't just buy a pattern. Well,
Yeah.
you can buy a pattern and then fit the fabric in,
Mhm.
but a lot of times, like it's like the fabric has to speak to you for a pattern. Like
Mhm.
the fabric that I bought for Calm Waters, it spoke to me specifically for that pattern.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so yeah, sometimes I have a pattern and then I find the fabric. Sometimes I find the fabric and then find the pattern. So it's tough.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting gold stars in the comments, though. They're all talking about how great Stephanie's patterns are. I love that.
I will now take my commission. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
There you go.
We'll talk later, Stephen.
But Walter has ones that you like.
Well, no, actually, there aren't too many pattern designers for men's clothing around. So I've been introduced to a few, and there's certain ones that I do like. There's Sinclair Patterns is their instructions are really good and they have tutorials on it. So I've done them. I started with One Wardrobe by Me. Her pattern instructions aren't quite as good, but she has been doing tutorials on them now. So that helps as well.
Yeah.
And there's a company in Canada called Thread Theory, and they have some very good men's patterns as well. And so I'll look at those sites if I'm looking for a new pattern or something like that, because I know that I've used them before and I like them. So that's basically how I've been doing it. Vogue patterns I haven't really used. They have some men's patterns, but apparently their instructions, I've only tried using their instructions a couple of times, and their instructions aren't as good as some of these other manufacturers that I've discussed. So
Yeah. Actually, Ingrid had made that comment that I guess Vogue patterns are like kind of complicated and not easy to follow.
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
you're
they
right.
aren't very intuitive.
Huh. All right. Oh, see, somebody's bought Stephanie's kit. Woo-hoo. I love it. All right. Well, we are and Math Geek, yes, tell me what that pattern is. Vesta by Julia Walks. Okay, cool. Oh, I've seen that. That name. Yep, I've seen that. I like it a lot. But anyway, sorry. So again, for the folks that maybe have joined later, Stephen and Walter, let us know your itinerary for your getting back home.
Yes, we're in Hunter Valley right now, which is a wine producing district here in Australia that's very famous. And after today, we get back on the road and we're going back to Sydney. That's where we started the journey, and we have about 4 or 5 days in Sydney, and then we'll be back home, the long trip, back to our end of the planet from that. So, and after we recover from
Jet lag.
jet lag. I have to start, well, registration for my spring retreat, the Idiot Quilter Spring Retreat, opens up on the 20th of April, 9 a.m. So I'm going to be busy with that for a bit. And I've got
Yeah.
3 quilts that need to be quilted, and I have ideas for designing other patterns, and so much to do, so little time. And what are you going to do, Walter? Walter got some fabric for, actually, Philippa gave.
Philippa gave us some fabric, and I bought some fabric, so I'll be making a couple of shirts with them. So
Yeah. So
Nice. And then Stephen will get to show them off. He'll Vanna White it.
yeah, unless he decides to make it for himself.
Yeah. I feel like that doesn't happen as often as you get to wear them.
No, but I am a fashion plate. So
she wears more often than I do. I tend to sometimes still wear t-shirts. So
yeah,
Stephanie,
I don't like.
you don't like. Oh wait, yeah. Okay, Stephanie. Stephanie,
No, go ahead.
Tell us what you got going on.
Well, the retreat basically is this next week. I'm really excited for that. It's like you said earlier, the 3rd annual retreat. We've got a few new people this year, so it'll be fun incorporating them into our crazy group. So I've been busy getting ready for that. And that's pretty much my sole focus right now. And then I'll be back in time next week for the Sew Day, for the Stephen and Stephanie Sew Day. Unfortunately, still solo. We're missing you badly, Stephen. But the ladies have been staying in line.
I popped in there earlier today, and not one person asked to be spotlit.
Nope. They've been really good. They've been really good.
That down.
They're saving it up for you, Stephen.
Yeah.
But we are looking forward to your return because we miss you. So.
Yeah, I miss everybody too.
Yeah.
And Russ, remind everybody.
This Saturday, I will be live at 11 a.m. Eastern. I don't know what I'm working on yet. I probably should get that figured out soon. And then Sunday evening, I have my weekly vlog with all the shenanigans that I've gotten up to this week.
Awesome. For me, it will be retreating it up at Millersburg. You might see Stephanie and I pop on live, but I'll for sure have like a compilation of the first couple of days. I know there's some shop hopping going to be involved, and just the general chaos of a cool retreat. I'll show on a video on Sunday where my brunch would usually be. I'll have some pictures and little clips of all of that for Sunday. But for the most part, I'm going to be focused on hanging out with the awesome Millersburg retreaters and really just enjoying time with everybody. I'm excited, so excited about it. And it's a day longer this time, so that's even better. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody here, Stephen and Walter and Stephanie and Russ, for joining me on my channel this month. Next month, we're back on Stephen's channel for the Sewcial review. So be on the lookout for that. I don't know if Stephen has or if Walter is picking the topic this time, but we'll hear soon.
We've been playing with the topic, but we're afraid it might be a little controversial. So I have to wait till I bounce it off of you guys first before we make it public with it. So
I'm 100% on board for controversy, so I'm good. Yes. Okay, so there you guys have it. We might have some controversy next month. But yep, thank you all for being here tonight out in YouTube land. We appreciate you all with all of your comments and some enablement on some patterns. And we look forward to seeing you in our next videos, on our lives, and next month for the next social review. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.